Alright, this video will be about angles, and I'll be covering measuring angles, congruent angles, types of angles, angle pairs, parallel lines cut by a transversal, and angle bisector. Hopefully I can get to all this within a reasonable amount of time. If not, I'll make a part 2. Alright, blah blah blah. Okay, cool. So, we covered rays in the last video, I believe. So, an angle is basically constructed when two rays. Oh, look, my fingers. That's an angle. It's got a starting point right here, and one finger ray extends out, and this extends out. So my fingers basically make an angle right here. Cool. That's the definition of an angle. The vertex at the point is the point at which the two rays meet. Okay, so this part here is called the vertex. What's a vertex? Hopefully you said the right answer. Okay. Clockwise, counterclockwise, initial side, terminal side. Okay. Clockwise, if you don't know what that means, ask somebody who's like over 30. They should know. Counterclockwise, if you don't know what that means, ask somebody who's over 30. They should know. Initial side. Okay. And terminal side. So, I can explain that. So, initial side is basically like this. If you have a, oh, can you see this? I hope you can. What the hell? There we go. Damn glare. There we go. So if you have a, what's this thing called? A ray, and it basically starts going either clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever direction. Hopefully you asked that to person over 30. And the original side will be called the initial side. Initial means start, beginning, the beginning. Terminal side means basically the end position of the ray. So if it spun around and it stopped here, but it started here, this will be the terminal side, and this part here will be the initial side, because that's where it started and that's where it ended. Perfect. Measuring angles and congruent angles. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, in geometry, we measure angles by degrees. What do we measure angles by? Degrees. Good answer. All right. When you get to a higher level of math, you don't need to worry about this in geometry, but you will typically measure something in either radians. I'll show you what that is later in a trig video if you're in that class. If not, don't worry about it. And actually, let me teach you something new. This is called converting between degrees and radians. So degrees are basically, you know how if you're doing skating, skateboarding or something like that, if you do a 360, you went in around a whole circle. Half of a circle will be 180. Quarter of a circle will only be 90 degrees. That's a right angle, by the way. We'll get into that later. So one whole revolution is called 360 degrees, and you label the degrees with that little circle in the top right-hand corner. All right, so degrees and radians. So this is the little chart that I always make. Radians and degrees. Alrighty. Don't mind the noise in the background. That's just my assistant. She's having a good overtime over there, back there, doing something, whatever she's doing. Alright, now. So to go from degrees to radians, what you do is you multiply the degree number by pi. If you don't know what pi is, don't worry about it. I'll get to it later. Pi, and then divide it by 180. And now you have your radians. If you have radians, you multiply it by 180 divided by pi. And there you go. You have your degrees. And I'll show you what this looks like right now. So, you start off with a degree. You multiply it by pi over 180. I suggest you copy this chart down. Multiply, you have the degree. You multiply by pi over 180. You multiply by pi. You leave it as pi, not 3.14. If you're at 3.14, you messed up, okay? We don't want a decimal. We want a pi in the answer, okay? multiplied by pi divided by 180, you typically are just going to simplify it. And that's a radian. Now, to go from radian to degree, you're just going to multiply by 180 divided by pi. That should cancel out a pi, and now you get your degree. Let's do one example and go from there. So, give me a degree. Good answer. 45. Multiply 45 degrees, ugly dog, by pi over 180. So, now you'll have 45 times pi, and you should have this. So now you should have 45 pi over 180. Now we simplify because we can divide both by 5, the top and the bottom. So now we'll have 9 pi over 180, so that should be 30. I'm cheating. I'm using a calculator. I don't have my calculator. Damn. Shit. Okay, fine. I'll divide it. 5 goes in that 3 times 15, 3, 0, that becomes 6, so 36, yeah. So now you have 9 pi over 36. Divide it again. You should divide it by 9 now, because now you should know what 36 divided by 9 is. You get pi over 4. So, 45 degrees is the exact same thing as pi over 4. So 45 degrees became pi over 4. We're good. Alright, so we just got done talking about converting this to that, that to this, blah, blah, blah. If you have congruent angles, basically that means they're the exact same. This equals that. For example, you have this bottle equals this bottle. They're the exact same Dasani bottle. What are you doing? This one is full of water. This one is not, right? So, when you are just referring to a angle without the measure of it, like if you're not talking about the measure of it, like let's say the angle is 45 degrees and blah, 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 then you typically label it as such. Angle B is congruent to angle A, right? You set it up like this. Now, angle B is congruent to angle A. That's what equals, and this little squiggly shit is on top of the equal sign for it, okay? Cool. Now, when we're talking about the measure, which is the actual number or what degree measure of that angle, you have to put an M in front of it. The squiggly line thing goes away, and then you put an M in front of the second one. So, this is very important because you will have a teacher who is a very much so of a stickler, and they will grind you in your mass about this, okay? Because I had one. His name was Mr. Evan Roman. Anyways, so angle B is congruent to angle. What is that? And then measure B is congruent to is equal to. You don't say congruent when you're talking about the measures. All right, cool. That concludes this 8-minute video. I'm gonna do a part 2 and a part 3.